It was just another sunny morning in May 2007. 14 children, excited and full of energy, gathered outside the gates of Elmridge Elementary School. Their backpacks bounced with every step. Some clutched lunchboxes, others held disposable cameras, eager to capture memories from what was meant to be a simple day trip to a local wildlife reserve. Parents waved, smiled, and blew kisses as the yellow school bus rumbled to life. Inside, the teacher, Miss Carver, did a quick head count. The driver, a man named Glenn, checked his route one last time. Everything was routine. Everything was normal. That was the last time anyone ever saw them. The bus never reached the reserve. It didn't return to the school. No distress call was made, no sign of a crash, no tire marks, no shattered glass, nothing. They had simply vanished. For the first few hours, authorities believed it was a mechanical breakdown. Maybe the bus had taken a wrong turn. But as day turned into night, and night into silence, a creeping dread spread through the town like a virus. Search teams were deployed, helicopters scanned the forests, bloodhounds were brought in, but there was no trail to follow. It was as if the road itself had opened up and swallowed them whole. Even creepier? Locals reported hearing children's laughter in the woods days later. Faint, echoing, almost playful. But no children were ever found. So what happened to bus number 47? A joyful trip turned into one of the most disturbing unsolved mysteries in recent history. And for 18 years, families were left with nothing but photographs and questions. But here's where it gets worse. Because 18 years later, in a forgotten corner of the forest, something was discovered. Something buried. And what was inside? You'll want to sit down for that. If this was your child's school bus, how long would you keep searching? Drop a bus in the comments if you think they never left that forest, or if you believe they were taken somewhere far worse. The trip was scheduled to take just under 3 hours, but when the clock struck 4 p.m. and the schoolyard remained empty, a quiet panic began to set in. Parents stood by the school gates, puzzled at first, then concerned. One by one, phones began to ring. Have you heard from them? Maybe there was traffic. Maybe the bus broke down. But no one had heard anything. Not from the teacher, not from the driver, not even a crackling radio signal. No emergency call, no roadside breakdown, no distress flare. The bus, and every single soul on it, had simply disappeared from the face of the earth. Authorities were alerted within the hour. Police traced the planned route. Search teams combed through winding forest roads. Helicopter patrols scanned the countryside. There were no skid marks, no broken tree limbs, no signs of a crash. The road was clean. The trail was cold. Surveillance footage, missing. GPS tracking, disabled. Nearby witnesses, none. It was as if the bus never existed. What disturbed investigators most was the complete absence of chaos. Usually, when something terrible happens, there are clues, broken glass, lost items, a single child's shoe. But here, there was nothing. Not even the sound of brakes, just silence. And a chilling question that echoed through the empty classrooms. How do 16 people vanish on a public road in broad daylight and leave behind no trace? Within 24 hours, the case exploded into a full-scale emergency. Helicopters circled the skies, search dogs sniffed every trail through the dense woods, police officers and volunteers canvassed every gas station, rest stop, and back road for over 80 miles, but no clues surfaced, not a single piece of clothing, not a tire track, not even a dropped backpack. The bus had vanished, and so had the children. The local sheriff described it in one haunting sentence. It's like chasing ghosts through fog. Parents were left broken. Some refused to leave the search zones, spending days wandering the forests with photographs in hand, calling out names that were never answered. News media flooded in. The town became a spotlight. Psychics were consulted. Conspiracy theories surfaced. Was it human trafficking, a government cover-up, or something no one could explain? But the truth was more painful than any theory. There was simply nothing. Surveillance cameras along the highway had strange blank gaps. 5 full minutes where footage simply didn't exist. Cell phone towers showed no pings. Every logical lead ended in a dead end. And so, after months of relentless searching, the investigation was quietly closed. The case was labeled a high-probability accident with unconfirmed location of remains. In other words, they gave up. But the families didn't. To them, this wasn't just a lost bus. It was stolen futures, empty bedrooms, unanswered birthdays, and worst of all, not knowing if their children were alive, suffering, or already long gone. Days turned into weeks, weeks blurred into months, and before anyone realized, a year had passed since the children vanished. But the families, they never stopped hoping. Mothers left bedroom lights on. Fathers built shrines of missing posters and childhood drawings. Siblings grew up beside empty chairs at dinner and birthdays filled with silence. Every time the phone rang, every knock at the door, they prayed it was the moment, the miracle, the return. But it never came. Year after year, the authorities gave less and less. The media moved on. The case faded from the headlines, but not from the hearts of the families who were still waiting. Some parents started their own private investigations. Others joined support groups for missing children. One mother visited the original trail every week, just to whisper her daughter's name into the trees. Even as hope became painful, even as time stretched to 5, then 10, then 18 years, they held on, because what else can a parent do when your child disappears? And no one tells you why. Some people believed the children had died, others believed they'd been taken, maybe still alive, somewhere. But all agreed on one thing. This was never just a disappearance. It was a mystery that refused to rest. 18 years passed. The world had moved on. The story of the missing children became nothing more than a tragic local legend, a warning told by teachers and whispered in small-town corners. But for the grieving families, it was never over. And then, in the spring of 2025, everything changed. It began as a simple construction project. A private company had purchased a plot of remote woodland just 27 miles from the school's original bus route. The area was thick with overgrowth, long forgotten by locals, a place no one had touched for decades. Bulldozers were sent in to clear the land for development. That's when it happened. A heavy machine struck something solid. At first, workers thought it was just a rusted storage container. But as the earth crumbled away, the unmistakable curve of a bus roof began to emerge from the dirt. The workers fell silent. Police were called immediately. Forensic teams arrived within hours and began unearthing what had been buried beneath the forest floor for nearly 2 decades. What they found shook even the most seasoned investigators. The school bus, bus number 47, was almost perfectly intact. It had been intentionally buried, not crashed. There was no sign of an accident, no impact damage, no shattered windows. The entrance and emergency exits had all been sealed shut from the outside. Inside, time had stood still. Backpacks sat neatly in rows, untouched. A crumpled school schedule lay on the floor. One child's notebook still had fresh drawings, stick figures smiling under a sun. But of the children, there was no trace, no bodies, no human remains, just their belonging, frozen in time. But something felt wrong. The bus had been buried carefully, methodically, as if someone didn't want it to be found. And then there was the soil. Investigators discovered that the area had been covered with a special blend of clay and vegetation designed to mask ground-penetrating radar. Whoever did this knew how to hide something permanently, but they hadn't planned on construction. News broke within hours, and the town was flooded once more with reporters, experts, and tearful families clutching old photographs. Some were hopeful, others were angry. Everyone had the same question: why hide the bus even if no one was meant to find it? Theories began swirling again. Was it a secret government operation, a deranged kidnapper, or something far darker than anyone had imagined? When forensic teams finished analyzing the buried bus, one horrifying truth became undeniable. This wasn't an accident. It was a cover-up. The bus had been intentionally lowered into the ground, not dumped or wrecked. There were no signs of impact, no attempt at rescue. The doors had been sealed shut from the outside, reinforced with steel brackets. The emergency hatch on the roof, welded closed, but that was only the beginning. In the bus's storage compartment, investigators found an object no one expected: a rusted metal box, sealed tight. Inside there were pages, drawings, and audio tapes. The tapes had degraded over time, but one chilling phrase could still be made out. "They keep scratching at the walls. We hear them at night." Even more disturbing, investigators uncovered claw marks inside the bus, not on the outside as if something had attacked them, but on the walls and windows inside, as if someone or something had tried desperately to get out. What happened in that bus wasn't peaceful. It was a trap. The children were never lost. They were taken, held, and then vanished. No remains, no footprints, no trail, just haunting signs of panic, frozen in time. Some believe the bus was used in a secret experiment. Others say it was a